Hi chaps, Simo P here from Beard, Biceps and Batchat. Today we're going to do a review of the newly released IS-5. So this tank is a Tier 8 Russian heavy tank on an IS-5, or alternatively known as the Object 730. This got released on the 2nd of June along with the Crimson Knight and the new 28E, the Tier 4 Russian medium, leaving up to the IS line. So this tank itself is a mix of, I was originally going to say the IS-3, but it's not. It's more the IS-3A Auto, or the Fatherland tank, and the IS-8. Now, the IS-8 was previously the Tier 9 Russian heavy tank leading up to the IS-7. That was replaced by the T10. I'll talk about the cost of it near the end of the video for a couple of reasons. I don't want to sully your opinions before I've talked about the tank itself. So I thought the best way to talk about this tank is to compare it to its best equivalent, which is the Tech Tree IS-3 rather than the Fatherland, for a couple of reasons. So this tank itself actually has more HP than the IS-3, only by 50. It's got 1550 HP. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference, but I suppose it can make a little bit of difference, especially because we have the consumables that are gonna help with HP, so maybe that will come in useful. One of the, I suppose, the biggest differences that isn't going to make a huge amount of difference is the signal ranges. So the big difference between the IS-5, the IS-3, also the Fatherland, is actually in the armour. So the IS-3 actually has 110 on its front of its, well, 110mm armour on the front, 90mm on the side space, and 60mm on the rear. This tank, as you would expect, has significantly, I wouldn't say significantly, but definitely better armour. So the pike nose on this tank is actually 120mm. Now, you might not think that's much, but extra 10mm makes that armour a lot more effective. The side armour is actually 120mm of spaced armour compared to the IS-3's 90mm of spaced armour. The rear armour is exactly the same at 60mm. The turret is also a little bit different from the IS-3 and the Fatherland as well. So the IS-3 on the turret, on the front of it, it works out about 249mm on the front, 172 on the back, and 100mm on the rear of the turret. This tank has about 201mm on the front of the turret, 129 on the sides, and 90mm, as you can see by the big green spot, on the back. It's not as effective, the turret armour, as the IS-3, but it's still very effective because it's very well angled, as you can see. It's very well rounded. The only problem this has, similar to the IS-3, is the exact same weak spot, which is just above the turret. There it is 30mm effective. Anything 90mm or above with pen is going to go straight through. You've probably also noticed on the front, on the driver's hatch, there is 50 to 60mm of armour there. Now you might be thinking that's a massive weak spot on this tank. Rather than, when I'm shooting straight on, I'm not going to aim for the lower glacis, I'm going to aim for this little spot here and just go through there. Well, that's a problem, because straight on, that is actually a very, very well angled piece of armour still. If you're side on, for example, it becomes easier to penetrate, but it's not a massive weak spot on the front of the tank. I mean, by all means shoot at it, it's still going to be easier than going through a pike nose face on, especially if you can't get shots at the lower glacis, but it wouldn't be my first point to shoot at. Especially if you can see the roof of the gun mantlet and you can get a shot into there, especially as it's got less armour on it and you're more likely to go through there than you are the driver's viewport. The engine on this thing, again, it's fairly similar to the IS-3, there's not much difference there. Essentially 700 horsepower, similar top speed to the IS-3. The fire chance is pretty much exactly the same. In terms of mobility, you know, it's an IS-3. A little bit more mobility than the IS-3A Auto. But, you know, there's not much difference in that bit. This is a big difference, though. Now this comes down to the ammo type. So the IS-5 gets as its standard ammunition APCR. Now that's a big deal. So the penetration value on the APCR is 221. It's not great, it's not bad, it's pretty much same ammo as the IS-3A Auto. What this does get is 1400 meters per second velocity. Now that's a big deal. You're going to lose less penetration over distance. It's going to be easier to hit moving targets. You're going to need it with the aim time and the accuracy on this tank. For its secondary ammunition, it also gets heat rounds. Now the damage and the pen are pretty good. 270 pen. The IS-3, as a comparison, for its normal ammo just gets AP. That's 225 mils of pen, and the APCR on the IS-3 for its premium round gets 265 millimeters of penetration, but it's still actually slower than the IS-5's APCR velocity. It works out about 1100, 1200. So it makes it a little bit harder to hit moving targets, or when tanks are rocking backwards and forwards in peekaboo. The other differences we have here are with the gun. They're not massive, but the IS-3 has a slightly worse gun than the IS-5 and the IS-3A Auto Fatherland, and that literally makes a bigger difference than you would think. So previously, when I had the IS-3 before the Fatherland was released, I used to run my IS-3 quite a lot. Since the Fatherland's been released, I very rarely run my IS-3, and that is just because it's got better DPM on the Fatherland. As it's a close-range brawler, the accuracy at 100mm doesn't really matter, and I prefer being able to have greater DPM. So the reload time on this is pretty much identical to the Fatherland rather than the IS-3, so it's got better DPM. What you lose the better DPM is the accuracy. So IS-3 has 0.4 accuracy at 100 meters. This has 0.46. So sniping at long range, as you can imagine, is going to be an absolute nightmare, and not something I would recommend. But because of the nature of the tank and the playstyle of the tank, you don't lose too much for the extra DPM, which makes this tank really, really good. Now, the playstyle of this tank is exactly as you imagine it would be with the IS-3. You want to get up close, you want to face hug, you want to bait shots into your pike and into your turret, and pretty much just abuse people with the extra DPM. Now, this as a tank is actually a very, very good tank. It has the DPM of the IS-3A Auto, but it's got the low profile and the armor characteristics of a tier 9 Russian heavy tank, which with a tier 8 heavy tank, sorry, is absolutely insane. This makes this tank very, very good. Now it's worth pointing out this tank does not have preferential matchmaking, so you are going to end up in tier 10 games. So this is going to be one of those where you need to not shy away from stocking premium rounds for this tanks, because if you end up in a tier 10 game, you are going to need them just because you're playing frontally, and even your APCR is going to do very little unless it's that weak spot of tier 10 heavy tanks. The side armour of the tank, again being 120mm of space, is absolutely brilliant. You could side scrape for this tank all day long. Nothing's going to get through. It's just going to hit and be sucked into the vacuum that is the side of this tank. If you do get caught shooting at the tank on the side, do not be tempted just to shoot blindly into the side of it. You need to aim between the tracks, that way you're avoiding the spaced armour and you're actually going to get some damage through. Again, it's not an easy target to hit. If the IS-3 is stationary or the IS-5 is stationary, it's not too difficult to actually get through. Now, the profile of this tank, as I mentioned before, is fairly low. Again, it just makes it more compact, and it just means you're exposing less of your hull. You can just go hold down and look just to bounce shots off your turret. Now, this is where this changes a little bit. Do I think this tank is worth buying in a bundle or buying a tool? So let me just go through the price of this tank. So in this bundle we can see it's 18,300 gold. You get the Armour T28E as well. When it's sold singly, it's going to go down to around 12,000 gold. So for 12,000 gold you're getting a tier 8 premium heavy Russian tank with the armoured characteristics of a tier 9 Russian heavy tank with the gun of the fatherland. You're also getting a unique camo on it, which, if I'm being honest, is a nice camo. It looks very pretty, but you are not getting preferential matchmaking. To me, for a tank that is very, very good, I would find this a little bit excessive still. Charging that amount for a tier 8 tank is, I don't want to say insane, but it is a lot for the tank. The other side of it could be that because it's such a good tank, it justifies charging this much for it, but just for a bit of extra camo and no preferential matchmaking, I struggle to see how it's justified. This is better than what we had with the Huntsman, which was just a pure reskin. That was absolutely insane. But it seems to be a growing trend that we've got tier 8 tanks going for 10, 11, 12, 13,000 gold for the tank. One of the chaps on one of my previous videos made a comment, would it be interesting if Wargaming, rather than releasing tanks for this amount, charge £10 per sort of tier 8 premium tank? The reason they do it this way, I assume, is because they've made money doing it this way. Would they make more money releasing the tank so it's cheaper and more readily available? The flip side of that is, would we have saturation of IS5s on every single game, 4 or 5 a team, where it'd throw off the balance of the matchmaking? I'd be quite interested to hear your thoughts on this, because I know a lot of people have been fairly vocal on the forums about this, so I'd be very, very interested to hear what you think. As I said, the tank itself is very, very good. Just for the price, I find it hard to actually justify saying, yes, this tank is worth it. If this tank was, say, 8,000 gold, I would say, yeah, definitely worth it. It's a great tank, you can have a lot of fun with it, looks great, suffers with no preferential matchmaking, but it's a very, very workable tank. At the price it's at now, you may as well, if you got the Fatherland for free, use the Fatherland. That's what's kind of left a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth for this tank. I don't know, let me know what you think in the comment section below, guys. For me, this definitely isn't one I'll be purchasing. It's just too expensive to justify, but I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on it. I hope you're liking the content, chaps. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you next time.